And Beth is one of those people who, like, when she gets an idea, she runs with it and learns about it and then teaches everyone else about it, which I think is a stellar quality for both a member of a community and a network. And we need people like Beth. Beth has written 2 books, The Network Nonprofit, and the last one's called, Beth?
Measuring the Network Nonprofit.
Measuring the Network Nonprofit. So I invited Beth here to talk to us about how do we look critically at these online communities and networks to understand what kind of value creation is happening. What does success look like? You know, what should I be looking for when I evaluate things like Indiegogo or Kickstarter? Because we can't just fall in love with these ideas. We have to say, is this strategic and doable? So Beth, I'd love you just to share some of your thinking on this.
You know, that's such a good question, and it actually is an entire chapter, 2 chapters in this book on measurement. And I'm working mostly with NGOs, and most of the time, and when you put NGOs together with technology, sometimes we start to focus on the tools and the steps, the action steps that we're going to do in this kind of moving forward, and we sort of forget sometimes, like, well, why are we doing this, and what is the end result? What's the change we want to see? And sometimes, you know, I'm amazed how many conversations I've witnessed where we come into the room to, you know, launch a project and to talk about strategy, where we immediately start talking about likes on Facebook or tweets or whatever the latest new widget is. And so I think the important thing is to stop, hit the pause button, and at the very beginning have that conversation with your team about what does success look like. And if you start to answer that question with, oh, we get a lot of likes on Facebook, or we get a lot of comments on our online thread, then keep asking, to what end? To what end? Until you get at the core change that you want to see. Now, in the work and space that I'm in, that usually has to do, nonprofits are looking for things like, we want on-the-ground social change, we want policies changed, we want you know, greater awareness of what our work that we're doing, we want to change people's attitudes or opinions or their behaviors around their work, or it could be just we want to engage people in the conversation. And so setting aside the conversation and asking, what does success look like? You know, a couple of techniques. You could say, oh, I don't know if I can do this or not, but like in the US, I would say, we really kicked and we say in the US, we really kicked ass. Okay, I said it. Or we were really successful. What does that look like?
You can say that, absolutely.
Okay, we kicked ass. What does that look like? You know, what is it that is most important? And actually, don't just, you know, give a one-liner or spend, you know, 60 seconds. Actually, spend an hour talking about that. You know, do it on a whiteboard or flip charts, butcher papers. I know Nancy knows all about that. So, or do sticky notes and synthesize it into a couple of key result or areas of what's the change we want to see.
So let me ask for instance on that, because I think this is really useful. If we're thinking about trying to identify what products need developing in international development, so let's say, for instance, a low-cost, low-carbon footprint bicycle, and we're starting with how do we know what people want? What would look like success for the design, for the gathering the requirements for the design?
Well, I would think more about the outcomes. And you said a low carbon footprint bicycle. Okay, so did it actually reduce the carbon footprint?
So the design specs, so, you know, knowing what a low carbon footprint bicycle looks like, understanding what the cost parameters are in, for example, in Vietnam or Myanmar.
Exactly. And knowing, you know, that's the result. And how do you keep, and also you said low cost, so understanding what the low cost materials or labor is to build this.
So if students were trying to do market research using some networks of development folks, because they might not be able to directly reach the end users online, a success for the requirements phase would be understanding all the parameters from some diverse stakeholders to make sure that they weren't building on assumptions. Would that be a good example?
Yes, it would be a great example.
Okay.
So laying out the questions that need to be asked, and you know, the things that you want to see be a reality as you develop this project. So it's not all just based on hunches and ideas that, you know, it's actually pointing to results. And one method that we use, that some nonprofits use, is something called a theory of change. So you start talking about what is the ultimate result, the low footprint. A lower carbon footprint is the ultimate result, right? Because it's going to save the environment. And then you work backwards from that down to, as you were saying, you know, what's the processes that are in the product development, and you will work back each one of those steps. And then you would have before you a theory of change. So you would know where to start and what's connected. The other question to ask is not only what constitutes success, but also what constitutes failure. What does failure look like? Because of course you want to avoid it, but how will you know to avoid it unless you've discussed what it might look like? And not only does it look like, and how can we prevent it?
That's a great question. So, Beth, if you were to recommend one piece or place they should read about theory of change, because that may be a really useful hook, where would you suggest that we look?
Okay, you know what? I actually wrote a blog post, and I'll give you the link. It's called Ask About what's the change. And I actually summarized all of the really good resources that teach people. I love that sound I'm hearing.
That's my granddaughter.
I love that. It comes from the philanthropic sector, and I summarized what I thought are some of the best discussions about what is the theory of change, how do you create one, because some of them that are out there get very laborious.
Fabulous. I'll add those to, when I post this video, I'll add them to the link. And I think that's the kind of advice we need, is where do we start? Because, you know, trying to evaluate across this continuum of things they're looking at, from the, you know, the requirements collection all the way through to marketing and customer communities. If they held it together with a larger theory of change, that might be a really useful perspective. So thank you.
It is. That, and also baby steps. Yeah, I hear the baby in the background taking baby steps.
Yes, she calls me Bunny, so that's what you hear. So my son's saying Bunny's on the phone. So with that, I'm going to let you go, because I know you're crazy busy with the launch of Measuring the Network Nonprofit. Congratulations, man. You continue to be my role model.
Well, you're my role model.
Okay, thank you so much, Beth.
Great, thank you.